few minutes and to be back in DeKalb County. It's good to be here, as John mentioned, with my family, my wife Caroline, and my two children, Robert Hayes and Mary Elliott. Let me ask them to stand if they don't mind, just so you'll know who they are, and they're here. And also with me tonight is Joe Morgan, that works in our office. He's a DeKalb County boy that works in our office down in Gadsden. So he can be with me tonight. But John, thank you for the invitation to be here, and what a great turnout, and what a great event to be at. And it's just a real treat to always come to DeKalb County and have a chance to visit with the Republicans here and those that are like-minded and who really have that vision and that really heart that I think our founding fathers had. And I just want to especially say it's good to be with Bob French. Bob, it's a real honor for you to be here tonight at this event. You're someone, of course, that, as that video showed, have plowed the field well before I came here. And I remember, and I don't remember if you remember, Bob, when I was a young candidate coming and talking to you when I was first running for Congress here in DeKalb County. And let me just tell you something that you may not know. Of course, you alluded to my dad, and he did serve as Republican circuit judge in Winston, Marion County for 30 years. But when he was in law school, he was technically a Democrat. So that's why you were pointed to as the only one. So it was not until about the time he got out of law school that he saw the light. So who knows? You may have had some influence there, and back in about what it had been about 1957, 58, 63.
Yeah, that's when we graduated. He graduated 62, I think.
And so anyway, that you may have had some influence, but technically he didn't really. Till right when he started about practice law, he realized that he was on the wrong team, and he became a Republican. But you're the reason they all pointed to you. So we thank you for your service. We thank you for your dedication and all the work that you've done. And really, as I say, plowed those fields that well before I was, if it had not been plowed back when you did all that work, and when so many in this room did work back in the early days, that I was able to be elected as the congressman for this district in 1996. But again, it's a real honor to be here. It's a real honor to have a chance to work for this congressional district and have a chance to work for you on a daily basis. Serving in the House of Representatives over the past few years, I've witnessed a lot of hard fights, witnessed a lot of tough decisions, and we've come through some tough times in Congress. Maybe not unscathed, but we're stronger and we're better prepared to face the future because of what we did go through. And tonight I don't want to downplay our current difficulties. You know that, and as Bob mentioned, we live in some challenging times. You're watching the news. You're talking to your families, your neighbors, and your colleagues about the current issues that we face. And it's easy to look at the issues and chalk it all up as to just typical Washington dysfunction. And I'll admit to you that everything feels pretty dysfunctional right now in Washington, D.C. But let me say that the recent impasse that we've experienced, you remember back a couple of months ago with the government shutdown and the controversy with the debt limit, that is in fact evidence that we're attempting in the House of Representatives, and let me note, a Republican-controlled House of Representatives, to grapple with our biggest and most dangerous problems in the United States of America. And that's the debt and deficit, and that's the future of our nation's economy. Those in the media like to say that elections have consequences, and I would wholeheartedly agree. But if the 2008 election, when Barack Obama was elected president, had consequences, so did those 2010 midterm elections when the Republicans took back control of the House of Representatives. The Republicans in Congress may sometimes be divided on our tactics and how we move forward, but I'll tell you, we are not divided about the reason we're in Congress, why we were sent to Washington, and why our constituents have kept us in Congress. One of the main reasons that Americans want Republicans in Congress is to get United States of America back on a solid footing financially, to get our fiscal house back in order. We're there to fight the overregulation that stifles business and chokes the entrepreneurial spirit of America. We're there to preserve the best paths for America, including a world-class health care system that is currently under attack. And we're there to say yes to a smart and responsible pieces of legislation that will make it easier to get America back to work. And most importantly, we're there to say no to bills that will damage the economy and further erode our liberties. At one time, the United States of America led the world in economic freedom, but that's no longer the case. According to the Fraser's Institute 2013 Economic Freedom of World Report, we're currently 17th on the list of countries ranked by how economically free their societies are. We have actually been suppressed by a former Soviet bloc country, Estonia. So needless to say, we have some work to do here in the United States. The Republican House has passed over 30 bills to help the economy create jobs. The Senate has failed to move on these Republican bills, but the House in bills that we have passed will empower businesses, or would empower businesses, by freeing them up from bureaucratic red tape. Bills that increase American energy production by removing the administration's roadblock to the Keystone Pipeline. And most recently, we passed 12 bills of legislation that would fund virtually the most important parts of the federal government when we could not reach an agreement during the government shutdown. But even in this, we faced obstacles from some in the Senate, some of the Democrats in the Senate, who really appeared to be more wanting to force their way and and stand in the way of the best interest of this country and not allowing the House to even have some input. Right now, one of the major obstacles to energizing our economy and addressing our financial responsibility is the Affordable Care Act, and you know it as Obamacare. We're really starting to see the impact that Obamacare is having on our families and on our businesses. And even some of my Democrat colleagues are now acknowledging that we should delay the individual mandate because of the disaster rollout of the law itself. Even with the so-called fixes to the healthcare.gov website that have been implemented, there's been no fix to the overall problems of the healthcare law. Over the past 3 years, the House has voted over 40 times to either repeal, to delay, or dismantle the President's healthcare law because we recognize not only that the underlying philosophy of healthcare was flawed, but also the track record of the administration in being effective in administering government agencies, and also that big programs that they administer are not very successful. Lost in the drama of the day-to-day headlines about healthcare.gov website is that Obamacare is directly hurting rural hospitals. They're hurting individuals that are getting hammered with monthly premium costs that have sometimes doubled, as well as deductibles that have sometimes tripled. And how is it that the President's signature law, one that claims to be his legacy, and one that he's not willing to compromise on for any change whatsoever by a Republican Congress, that after 3 years of rollout of development and costing twice as much as its original projection? How is it that something like that is happening is what the Republicans are trying to understand. One of the unfortunate things we're seeing now is how that the Department of Health and Human Services has been so resistant in subjecting itself to congressional oversight. And some of the major problems that we're seeing with the rollout of the health care bill may not have happened if it had availed itself to congressional oversight. I don't believe that Obamacare just needs to be repealed, but it needs to be replaced. To do this, Congress with a bill that would do that. And sometimes Congress is criticized by some in the national media who would say, why don't you have a plan? Well, we do have a plan. And we have come up with the American Health Care Reform Act, H.R. 3121, that would simply implement common sense, market-based reforms to health care. Just a few things that the bill would do: it would allow individuals to purchase insurance across state lines and permit small businesses to band together to negotiate for better rates. It would also reform medical liability laws and provide protection for patients with pre-existing conditions. And it also create a new above-the-line standard deduction for health insurance. This last provision, the above-the-line standard deduction, would eliminate the current uncapped tax benefit for employer-sponsored health insurance and the self-employed tax deduction, and replace them with a simple standard deduction of $7,500 for individuals and $20,000 for families. This tax benefit would be portable, would give families the flexibility they need to choose the plan that best fits their particular needs. Yes, you heard that right. A plan that fits a family's particular needs, not what some politician or what some bureaucrat in Washington thinks you need. And you'll note that in this discussions of these various issues, there's no talk with the current healthcare system of weeding out waste, fraud, or abuse within the government or the welfare programs. All we're currently seeing is tax increases instead of re-examination of our governmental principles. This is where the differences between the House, controlled by the Republicans, and the Democrats, that are controlled by the Senate, controlled by the Democrats, lie. And this is the difficulty that we face as we get closer to this new deadline that we're coming on January the 15th, when the government funding will expire next. I mentioned a few minutes ago in my comments that elections do have consequences, and that I agree with that. The 2012 election had consequences, no question about it. 2012, President Obama was reelected. The United States remained under the control of the Democrats. But it also must be remembered that the same people in 2012 that reelected Barack Obama also reelected a Republican majority in the House of Representatives. The people in Washington are going to have to find a way to work together, to bridge our differences in a way that doesn't violate principles, but at the same time acknowledges the realities of our situation. That's no easy task, and it may take a little longer than we'd hoped, but eventually we'll get the job done, as we always have in the past. Sometimes when circumstances seem discouraging, I think it's useful to reflect on how much we've experienced in this country. We won our independence at very great odds. We had our capital burned by the British. We survived a great Civil War. We survived a Great Depression, 2 world wars, and a nuclear arms race. And we're surviving a protracted war on terrorism at home and abroad. Back in September, Russian President Vladimir Putin chided Americans for their belief in the exceptional nature of our nation. He believes that we should stop seeing our country as that special. I would disagree with Mr. Putin. While Americans themselves are not better than other people in the world, there is no doubt that we are an exceptional nation. It seems that God has always had a special place in the world for the United States of America, and even from the very beginning of its days. The America I know and love has long seen adversity as opportunity. Our nation's character provides us with tools needed to triumph in just about any situation. We will look through these past difficulties and emerge, I believe, as a stronger and will be better for it in the long run. Before I wrap up, let me just say, as John mentioned, I wish each of all a very Merry Christmas during this holiday season. I know families around the world are celebrating the holiday season, and of course we need to remember, and I think I have to be reminded, and we all have to be reminded, that It's not what we get, but what we give that makes Christmas what it is. And remembering that it was the gift that God gave of His Son over 2,000 years ago is that gift of salvation that gives all year long, 365 days a year, but only if we accept it. So again, it's a real honor for me to have an opportunity to be with you tonight, have my family with me this evening, and to have a chance to represent this great county and this great congressional district in our nation's capital. So may God bless each of you, and may God bless America. Thank you. Before I turn it back over to John, I would like to do two special presentations tonight. And we have two special young men with us that helped out with the colors when they were brought in this evening. And I would like to ask George Westmoreland and Max Blackwell to please join me on the stage. For those of you who may not know, both George and Max recently received their Eagle Scout Award, and I would like to do a little presentation tonight to each one of them. Not only a certificate of special congressional recognition for each of them, but also I'd like to present each of them with a flag that was flown over the United States Capitol in each of their honor for receiving Eagle Scout. And let me just read the certificate. It says, "This is to certify that the accompanying flag was flown over the United States Capitol on November the 5th, 2013. At my request as a member of Congress, it was flown in honor of the Eagle Scout Court of Honor for Kenneth Max Blackwell III. That was on Saturday, December the 7th, 2013, which of course will be tomorrow. And then also George Ivan Westmoreland for his Eagle Scout Court of Honor on Saturday, December the 7th. So let me present each of you with the flag and their certificate, and let me say to each of you, congratulations.
I asked both of these guys a little earlier how long they were going to speak. Since they both said at least 20 minutes each, I asked them not to speak, since we were kind of running on. But Boy Scouting is a big part of my life, my family's life. And what I wanted to recognize as we begin to close, how many Eagle Scouts do we have in the room with us tonight? If you're an Eagle, please stand. Have an Eagle here? I was in scouting, but I never achieved the rank of Eagle Scout. So let me also, so I can stand up, recognize anyone who was in scouting when they were youth, even if they didn't reach the rank of Eagle. As well as any Girl Scouts that I think these are great organizations. They have served our country well. They serve our youth well. Those organizations face challenges too, and so we need to continue to have good government, good leaders for our scouts and other organizations. As we begin to close, I wanted to bring your attention to the flowers that we have here on the front of the stage. One thing that our ladies organization here in the county does every year is they sell these flowers as a fundraiser, and they've been selling some. And somehow or another, they had a few extra flowers, and they brought them down here, and they're selling those. So if you see one of these beautiful flowers that you want to carry home with you tonight, then you can see Miss Celeste Reagan, and she can let you pick one out and carry home with you tonight. But what we also want to do, and what the ladies organization wanted to do, was to present one of these flowers to Mr. Bob French tonight. So we'll let you get with Celeste and work that out. We appreciate your service, as well as the Aderholts for helping us with this event and speaking with us tonight. In closing, I hope that you've enjoyed the program. I appreciate every one of you for coming out. The weather was a little rough earlier, and as we put this event together, I lost a little more hair over the last few days trying to get this worked out, but I'm glad that it's finally worked out in our favor. I do want to remind you that we have filmed, the event was filmed tonight, and it's going to be put on the internet for you to view here in a few days. It was the southerntorch.com has filmed it, and it'll be on their website. They're filming all kinds of events. They went to the Progressive Ladies Organization meeting last night, filmed that, and they told me that they put it on the internet earlier today, so you can go in there and check that out too. It's a great source of income, interest. And then we do have, I want to recognize the other media outlet. We have the Times Journal here with us again tonight. Stay involved. My closing statement that I wanted to say, of course, was that next year is an election season. These guys got involved way back in the day, and you see how that's ended up in our party growing, the Young Republicans. Next year's going to be busy. If we think that 2013 was busy in our county party with things, we can bet that 2014 is going to be really moving along. I ask each of you to get out and support our Republican candidates. Call your friends, your family. Volunteer to work the polls. Find a way to be involved and further our conservative cause. As we talked earlier, your country, your state, your county, they need you a lot. If you can't volunteer, financially support. Be involved. And what was it you said, Mr. French? I'm one. And you guys made a difference, just like you. And you can make a difference too. But I thank you for coming out tonight. Please have a safe trip home and enjoy the fellowship here with each other, and we'll see you next year.